"Sir, members only." The words came sharp and public, cutting through the quiet morning air of the Green Valley Country Club. Marcus Johnson paused mid-step on the marble entrance walkway, golf bag resting against his shoulder. Around him, perfectly trimmed lawns stretched toward a championship golf course glowing under early sunlight. Wealthy members in pressed polos walked past casually until they noticed security blocking him. The attendant forced a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marcus nodded and reached into his pocket. But before he could speak again, another staff member leaned toward the attendant and whispered, not quietly enough, "I don't think he's on the list." A nearby group of players slowed their steps, watching openly now. One man muttered, "Probably here for maintenance or delivery." A few soft chuckles followed. Marcus felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. Not surprise, just recognition. Different place, same assumption. "I received confirmation yesterday," Marcus said evenly. "You can check under Johnson." The attendant typed briefly into a tablet, frowning. "I'm not seeing anything." Behind Marcus, a luxury SUV pulled up. A white member stepped out, handed keys to valet, and walked straight inside without being questioned. Marcus noticed. Everyone noticed. The attendant stepped forward slightly. "Sir, unless you can verify membership, we'll have to ask you to leave the property." Phones slowly appeared in spectators' hands. The humiliation hung heavy in the air. "Before you asked me to leave," he said quietly, "maybe you should call the club director." The attendant sighed. "Our director is busy preparing for today's charity tournament." Marcus nodded calmly. "I know." Green Valley Country Club was one of the most exclusive clubs in the state, a place where business deals were made between swings and reputation mattered, almost as much as wealth. Marcus Johnson knew that well, because 5 years earlier, he had stood on the same property under very different circumstances. Back then, he wasn't carrying golf clubs. He was carrying construction blueprints. Marcus owned Johnson Urban Development, a company specializing in restoring failing community spaces. When Green Valley nearly went bankrupt after years of financial mismanagement, investors quietly approached Marcus for help restructuring the property. He agreed, but only under one condition. The renovation would include community outreach programs and charity initiatives benefiting underserved neighborhoods. The investors accepted, but the deal remained confidential. Most members never knew who saved their club. Marcus preferred it that way. Today's charity tournament marked the official reopening celebration after years of renovation, and Marcus had been invited as a special guest. Yet now he stood at the entrance, being denied access to something he had helped rebuild. The attendant's patience thinned. "Sir, I'm going to have to insist." Before he finished, a voice called from behind, "What seems to be the problem?" Marcus offered a small smile. "Morning, William." Harrington turned immediately toward staff. "Why is Mr. Johnson not inside preparing for the tournament?" The attendant blinked rapidly. He couldn't verify membership." Harrington stared in disbelief. "Membership," he repeated. "He doesn't need membership." Confusion rippled through the watching crowd. Harrington stepped beside Marcus and addressed everyone nearby. Silence crashed over the entrance. Golf bags stopped moving. Whispers died instantly. The same people who had laughed moments earlier now stared wide-eyed. Marcus remained calm, offering no reaction beyond a polite nod. Harrington continued, "Today's charity tournament exists because of him." The attendant's face drained of color. I didn't realize." Harrington gestured toward the entrance immediately. "Please, Marcus." The doors opened, and the man who had nearly been removed walked calmly into the club he had saved. Inside, conversations buzzed with sudden curiosity. Members whispered as Marcus passed, "That's him. I thought investors were from New York. He rebuilt the course." Marcus ignored the attention, heading toward the locker room. He changed into golf attire quietly, focusing on the game rather than the spectacle forming around him. Golf had always been meditation for him, a place where performance depended only on discipline and patience. Harrington stepped onto a small stage near the first tee. "Before we begin," he said, "I'd like to recognize someone whose vision made today possible." He invited Marcus forward. Applause began hesitantly, then grew louder as realization spread. Marcus accepted the microphone reluctantly. "I didn't rebuild this club for recognition," he said calmly. "I did it because spaces like this can bring people together if they're willing to grow." Marcus continued, "Respect isn't proven by exclusivity. It's proven by how we treat people before we know who they are." The message landed heavily. No accusations, no names, yet everyone understood. The tournament began soon after. Marcus played steadily, his calm precision contrasting sharply with players still distracted by embarrassment and curiosity. By the final hole, spectators gathered along the green. Marcus lined up a difficult putt, long distance, slight downhill curve. He breathed focused, and struck the ball. Cheers erupted. Marcus had won the tournament. But the victory felt secondary to something larger unfolding. Afterward, during the charity ceremony, Harrington announced record-breaking donations, funds supporting youth sports programs in underserved communities across the city. Marcus watched children from local schools invited onto the course for the first time, their excitement genuine and contagious. One young boy approached him shyly. "Are you really the owner?" he asked. Marcus smiled. "I just help fix things." The boy looked around in awe. Marcus knelt slightly to meet his eyes. "You'll belong anywhere your effort takes you," he said. Later that evening, the attendant who had stopped Marcus approached him privately. His voice trembled. "I want to apologize," he said. "I made assumptions I shouldn't have." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "What matters," he replied, "is what you do after realizing it." The attendant swallowed hard. "I've been thinking about it all day." Marcus smiled gently. "That's how bias survives," he said. Silence. The man nodded, understanding fully. Weeks later, Green Valley introduced new membership and staff training, focused on inclusion and professionalism. Policies changed quietly, but attitudes shifted noticeably. Visitors from diverse backgrounds began appearing more often. Community youth programs used the course during designated hours. The club slowly transformed from an exclusive symbol into a shared space of opportunity. Marcus returned occasionally, always without announcement, just a simple greeting. "Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson." Normal, respectful, equal. He smiled softly, realizing that real success wasn't the reveal or the applause, it was the absence of suspicion. Because true change meant moments like the first one would no longer happen to someone else. Marcus took another quiet swing, watching the ball soar cleanly through the sky. Progress, like golf, required patience. One swing at a time. The silence after Daniel's revelation didn't disappear quickly. It lingered in the air like something heavy that nobody knew how to carry. People who had laughed earlier now avoided eye contact. Conversations that once felt loud and confident turned into quiet whispers. The same members who had questioned Daniel's presence now stood awkwardly, unsure whether to apologize or pretend nothing had happened. But Daniel didn't look angry. His expression carried something deeper, disappointment mixed with calm understanding. The kind of expression someone has when they've experienced the same moment too many times before. The charity organizer slowly approached him. Her voice trembled slightly. "Mr. Cartwright, I had no idea." Daniel nodded gently. "That's usually how it works." Her shoulders dropped as if the weight of those words hit harder than any accusation. Across the clubhouse, Richard Whitmore stood frozen near the bar. The confident country club president who had earlier demanded proof of membership suddenly looked smaller. His authority had vanished the moment the truth came out. Finally, he walked toward Daniel. Each step seemed forced. "I owe you an apology," Richard said quietly. "What happened earlier shouldn't have happened." Daniel looked directly into his eyes, not with anger, but with clarity. "You didn't question my membership?" Daniel replied calmly. "You questioned whether someone like me belonged here at all." The words landed hard. Several nearby members stopped talking entirely, listening. Richard opened his mouth but couldn't immediately respond because deep down, he knew Daniel was right. It wasn't about paperwork. It was assumption. Daniel continued, his voice steady but emotional. "I've built companies worth millions. I've funded scholarships. I've created jobs. But somehow, walking into a room like this still turns into an investigation." No one interrupted. "For years," Daniel added, "I thought success would change how people see you, but sometimes, success just gives people new reasons to doubt you." A young employee standing nearby wiped tears from her eyes. She had witnessed the entire confrontation earlier but felt powerless to speak. The charity host cleared her throat, trying to shift the energy. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, raising her voice slightly, "today's tournament winner and the primary donor responsible for restoring this entire golf course, Mr. Daniel Carter." Applause began slowly, then grew louder. But Daniel noticed something important. Some people clapped out of respect, others clapped out of embarrassment, and a few clapped because they suddenly realized they had misjudged someone completely. After the ceremony, Daniel stepped outside onto the balcony overlooking the course. The sunset painted the grass in golden light, the same course he had secretly paid to rebuild after it nearly went bankrupt 2 years earlier. Footsteps approached behind him. It was Marcus, the young black caddy who earlier had quietly encouraged Daniel before the tournament started. "Sir," Marcus said nervously, "I just wanted to say, watching what happened today meant a lot." Daniel smiled warmly. "Why?" Marcus hesitated. "Because I see things like that happen all the time here. People assume things about us before we even speak." Daniel leaned against the railing. "When I was your age," he said softly. I almost quit spaces like this entirely. I told myself they weren't meant for people like me. Marcus nodded slowly. But then I realized something, Daniel continued. If we leave every place where we're doubted, those places never change. The young caddy absorbed every word. You didn't yell, Marcus said. You didn't get angry. Daniel chuckled lightly. Oh, I was angry. But anger teaches less than truth does. Inside the clubhouse, members continued discussing what had happened. Some expressed guilt, others defended themselves awkwardly. But a conversation had started, one that the club had avoided for decades. Later that evening, Richard Whitmore called an emergency board meeting. For the first time in the club's history, policies regarding membership conduct and discrimination were officially reviewed. Staff training programs were proposed. Anonymous complaint systems were introduced, not because of public backlash, but because everyone present had witnessed the consequences of quiet bias becoming public humiliation. Before leaving, Daniel returned to the main hall one last time. People parted slightly as he walked through, not out of fear but respect earned through dignity. Richard approached again. We'd like to rename the annual charity tournament in your honor, he said carefully. Daniel paused, then shook his head. No, he said gently. Name it after opportunity instead. Richard looked confused. Daniel smiled faintly. Because today it wasn't about me winning, it was about people learning. As Daniel walked toward the exit, several staff members thanked him personally. The same security guard who had earlier stopped him at the entrance stepped forward nervously. I'm really sorry, sir. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Next time, he said kindly, just welcome people first. Outside, the evening air felt calm. Marcus watched as Daniel's car pulled away, realizing he had just witnessed something bigger than a golf tournament. He had watched dignity defeat assumption. Weeks later, membership applications at the club began to diversify. Conversations changed. Staff behavior changed. Even longtime members started noticing how small actions shaped larger experiences. And though many would remember Daniel Carter as the tournament champion, the real victory wasn't the trophy. It was the moment an entire room was forced to confront a truth they had never noticed before, that respect should never depend on recognition, wealth, or status. Sometimes, the strongest statement isn't proving you belong. It's showing others why everyone already does.